Okay, so today we're going deep, really deep into a topic that's tough, really tough, but incredibly important.
Hmm.
We're talking about child sexual exploitation and grooming gangs.
Right.
So we're looking at this video essay by Tim Davies, and he explores this issue of predominantly Pakistani Muslim grooming gangs in the UK.
Okay.
He really focuses on the Rotherham case, but references other instances like the ones in Oxford.
Yeah.
Now I have to say, just right off the bat,
Hmm.
the source material is disturbing.
Right.
He uses court transcripts, whistleblower accounts, and news reports,
Yeah,
and what you get is a truly harrowing picture.
it is.
But, it's important that we engage with this information,
Oh,
no
absolutely.
matter how uncomfortable it may be.
You're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Understanding these issues is the first step towards addressing them effectively. So yeah.
So Davies, he begins his video essay with a reading of the Oxford trial sentencing remarks. And these remarks were delivered by Judge Peter Rook QC.
Oh wow.
And the judge, he doesn't pull any punches. He really details the horrific nature of these crimes.
Right.
And he strongly condemns the perpetrators.
Yes.
What really struck me, reading this was
Yeah.
the emphasis on the victim's youth and vulnerability.
Oh, for sure.
The fact that these were children
Right.
systematically targeted and abused.
Yeah, and it's fascinating, that Davies chooses to start with the judge's words.
Yeah,
It sets a powerful tone for the whole video essay.
that's true.
It's a stark reminder that we're dealing with real crimes, real victims,
Right.
and a justice system that's trying to grapple with the enormity of what happened.
Yeah, it's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And then he dives into, specific cases.
Okay.
One that really stayed with me
Yeah.
was an account of this 12-year-old girl who was raped and then, in a desperate attempt to defend herself, threatened her attacker with a knife. And his response,
Oh gosh.
he beat her with a baseball bat and then sexually assaulted her with it.
Oh my God.
Yeah, he even branded her.
Oh, that's horrific.
It's just
Horrible.
unimaginable.
It is hard to even comprehend that level of brutality.
Yeah,
And Davies doesn't shy away from these details.
does not.
He reads from court transcripts
Yeah.
recounting the abuse in stark, unflinching language.
Yeah.
He even mentions that his wife, to whom he was reading these accounts,
Oh, wow.
pleaded with him to stop because the imagery was so disturbing.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. It really brings home the emotional weight of these crimes.
But
It's not just an abstract issue. It's about real people,
Mhm.
real children who've suffered unimaginable trauma.
Right. Right. And it underscores the importance of listening to the victims' voices,
Yeah.
their experiences.
Mhm. Yeah.
They need to be at the center of this conversation.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah.
So Davies, he goes on to discuss the Rotherham scandal,
Right.
a case that, as you mentioned, many people are already familiar with.
Yeah, Rotherham was a massive scandal.
Right.
It's estimated that over 1,400 children were abused
Wow.
in that town over a 16-year period.
Gosh.
And what's perhaps even more shocking is the systemic failure that allowed this to happen.
Yeah.
Authorities often dismissed the victims' claims or even blamed them for the abuse.
It's unbelievable.
It's awful.
Yeah, and he gives, specific examples of
Yeah.
the abuse.
Yeah.
Drugs were used to coerce the victims, violence was commonplace,
Wow.
and threats were used to keep them silent. What I found particularly disturbing
Yeah.
was that many of the victims were in care homes,
Right.
places that should have been safe havens.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
These children were already vulnerable,
Yeah.
often from troubled backgrounds or facing difficult family situations.
Yeah.
And instead of receiving care and protection, they were further exploited by the very system that was supposed to help them.
Yeah.
This raises serious questions about institutional responsibility
Yeah.
and the need for safeguarding measures that actually work.
Absolutely. So we're seeing this pattern here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Vulnerable children, a system that fails to protect them,
Yeah.
and perpetrators who exploit that vulnerability.
Right.
But how do they gain access to these children in the first place? That's where the concept of grooming comes in, right?
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Grooming is a process of manipulation.
Right.
Perpetrators build trust and exploit vulnerabilities to gain control over their victims. They often use gifts, attention,
Right.
and even feigned affection
Mhm.
to create a sense of dependence.
Yeah.
And then gradually they introduce sexual acts,
Bruh.
often using, threats or violence to coerce the victims into compliance.
And Davies really emphasizes how perpetrators target individuals,
Right.
who are lacking strong support systems
Yeah.
or struggling with self-esteem. So
Yeah.
those who are already, in a sense, isolated and looking for connection.
And this is where it gets really interesting
Yeah.
because it challenges our assumptions about who is vulnerable to this type of abuse.
yeah.
It's not just about stranger danger.
Right.
It's about recognizing that anyone, regardless of their background,
Yeah.
can be manipulated and exploited
Right.
if they're in a vulnerable position.
Absolutely. And Davies expresses a lot of frustration about what he perceives as a lack of media coverage and
Ah.
public discussions surrounding these grooming gangs.
Yeah.
He specifically mentions whistleblowers like Sarah Champion and Jane Sr.,
Right.
who tried to raise awareness,
Yeah.
but they were often ignored or silenced.
That silencing is a crucial aspect of this story.
Yeah.
These whistleblowers were incredibly brave to speak out,
Yeah.
risking their careers and reputations to bring this issue to light.
Mm-hmm.
But sadly, their concerns were often dismissed.
Yeah.
Sometimes even
Yeah.
labeled as racist or Islamophobic.
Wow.
This raises important questions about who gets to speak on these issues and whose voices are prioritized.
Right. And it connects to this larger point that he makes throughout the video.
Yeah.
The difficulty of discussing this issue openly and honestly, particularly when it intersects with race and religion.
You're right. It's a sensitive topic, and,
Yeah.
and there's a real fear of being labeled racist
Right.
or Islamophobic
Yeah.
if you even raise these issues.
You're right. Yeah.
But Davies argues that this fear of causing offense is actually preventing us from having honest conversations
Right.
and addressing the problem effectively.
So he reads a quote
Yeah.
from a victim who was present in court. And she talks about her dismay at the perpetrator's family's lack of remorse.
Right.
Some of them were even hostile towards her.
That reaction is incredibly difficult to process.
Yeah.
But it speaks to a deeper issue.
Yeah.
The potential for denial and victim blaming.
Yeah. Yeah, it's heartbreaking, and it really makes you wonder about the cultural and societal factors that might contribute to such reactions.
It is a complex issue.
Yeah.
Some cultures there's a strong emphasis on family loyalty,
Mm-hmm.
even when a family member has committed a serious crime.
Yeah.
There might also be cultural norms
Mhm.
around shame and honor
Right.
that make it difficult for families to accept
Yeah.
that their loved one, could be capable of such acts.
So instead of, confronting the issue,
Yeah.
there's a tendency to deny it or
Yeah.
to shift the blame
Mhm.
to the victim. It creates this cycle of silence that allows the abuse to continue.
Precisely. And this is where the conversation becomes particularly challenging because while it's crucial to acknowledge the role of culture and community,
Yeah.
we also need to avoid making sweeping generalizations
Yeah.
or stigmatizing entire groups of people.
Yeah, it's a tightrope walk. You wanna address these cultural dynamics
Yeah.
without feeding into, prejudice or discrimination.
Exactly. It requires nuance,
Yeah.
empathy, and a willingness to engage with different perspectives.
Right.
Even when they make us uncomfortable.
Right. So Davies also highlights another disturbing aspect of this issue.
Okay.
The deportation of convicted perpetrators
Yeah.
back to their countries of origin.
Right.
He shares a clip of a Pakistani man who was deported after serving 3 years in prison for his crimes.
This raises important questions about, international law.
Yeah.
And the challenges of holding perpetrators accountable when they have ties to multiple countries.
Right.
Deportation might seem like a straightforward solution,
Right.
but it's often a lengthy and complicated process.
Yeah.
And even when successful, it doesn't necessarily address the root causes of the problem.
It feels like a Band-Aid solution.
Yeah.
You're sending the individual away,
Right.
but you're not necessarily dealing with the underlying issues that led to the crime in the first place.
Exactly. And it also raises concerns about the the potential for reoffending
Hmm.
in the country where the perpetrator is deported to.
Right. So Davies then shifts his focus
Okay.
to solutions.
Yeah.
He argues that stricter immigration policies
Yes.
would help to prevent individuals who pose a threat to the country from entering in the first place.
This is where we need to be
Yeah.
careful. While the desire for security is understandable,
Yeah.
we have to consider the potential consequences of such policies.
Yeah.
How do we define threat? How
Yeah.
do we ensure that these policies are applied fairly
Yeah.
and don't lead to discrimination against entire communities?
Yeah, it's easy to slip into fear mongering and scapegoating,
That is
especially, when we're dealing with such emotionally charged issues.
Absolutely. And we have to remember that stricter immigration policies alone
Yeah.
won't solve the problem.
Right.
Child sexual exploitation happens in every country,
Yeah.
every culture.
Right.
It's a complex issue with deep roots,
Yeah.
and addressing it requires a multifaceted approach.
So Davies also calls for a stronger police force.
Okay.
He argues that they need more resources
Mhm.
and greater authority to crack down on these grooming gangs.
This argument raises questions about the balance of power.
Right.
While a well-funded and well-trained police force is essential,
Yeah.
simply giving them more power without proper oversight and accountability
Right.
can be dangerous.
Yeah.
We need to ensure that any increase in police authority
Yeah.
is accompanied by robust mechanisms
Okay.
to prevent abuse and protect civil liberties.
And there's also the issue of trust. Davies highlights the fact that many victims were afraid to go to the police, either because they didn't believe they would be taken seriously,
Yeah.
or because they feared retaliation from the perpetrators.
That's a crucial point.
Yeah.
Building trust between law enforcement and
Oh,
the communities they serve
yeah.
is essential for effective policing.
Right.
Especially when it comes to sensitive crimes like child sexual exploitation. We need police officers who are trained to recognize the signs of grooming and abuse,
Mm-hmm.
who understand the complexities of trauma,
Yeah.
and who can approach victims with empathy and sensitivity.
So it's not just about, giving the police more power.
Right.
It's about changing the culture of policing
Yeah.
to make it more responsive to the needs
Exactly.
of vulnerable communities.
Exactly. And it's also about addressing the systemic issues within law enforcement
Mhm.
that might contribute to these crimes being ignored or downplayed.
Right.
Racism, sexism,
Yeah.
and a lack of understanding about cultural dynamics
Mhm.
can all create, blind spots
Yeah.
that prevent police from seeing the full picture.
Okay, so Davies also argues that we need to hold accountable those
Okay.
who allowed the abuse to occur.
Yes.
The social workers,
Yeah.
the police officers, and politicians. Hmm.
Who turned a blind eye or actively covered it up.
Accountability is essential.
Right.
If individuals in positions of power are aware of abuse and fail to act,
Yeah.
they should be held responsible.
Yeah.
This requires transparency,
Yeah.
oversight, and a willingness to investigate and prosecute those who abuse their power.
But it also requires, a culture of speaking out, doesn't it?
It does.
Like, people need to feel empowered
Yes.
to report wrongdoing without fear of reprisal.
You're right. We need to create environments where whistleblowers are protected
Yeah.
and where victims feel safe coming forward.
Right.
This requires a shift in mindset,
Yeah.
both within institutions and in society as a whole.
So Davies also touches on this broader issue.
Yeah.
The idea that those who hate a country and its people
Right.
shouldn't be allowed to live there.
He even plays a clip of Douglas Murray, who echoes this sentiment.
This is a very controversial statement,
Yeah.
and it raises a lot of complex questions.
Yeah.
On the one hand,
Yeah.
we want to protect our communities
Yeah.
from those who might wish to do them harm.
Yeah.
But on the other hand,
Right.
we need to be very careful about judging individuals based on their beliefs
Right.
or opinions.
It's a slippery slope.
It is.
Who gets to decide
Okay.
who hates a country?
Exactly.
And what are the criteria? It opens the door
Yeah.
to all sorts of potential abuses.
Okay, exactly. And it also ignores the fact that people's beliefs and opinions
Right.
can change over
Yeah.
time.
Hmm.
We should be encouraging, integration and understanding,
Right.
not creating divisions based on perceived hatred.
Okay, so Davies then brings up this case that made headlines recently. The arrest of 3 Afghan nationals in the UK.
Right.
They had been convicted in Belgium for people smuggling and sexual offenses against migrant minors.
This case highlights the global nature
Yeah.
of human trafficking and exploitation.
Yeah.
It's a reminder that these crimes don't respect borders,
Right.
and that international cooperation is crucial for addressing them
Yeah.
effectively.
It also underscores the particular vulnerability of migrants and refugees.
It does.
They're often fleeing dangerous situations,
Yeah.
desperate for safety and a better life,
Yeah.
and this makes them
Yeah.
prime targets for exploitation.
You're right, and this is where the conversation about immigration becomes even more nuanced.
Yeah.
We need to find a way to balance the need for security with the humanitarian imperative to protect those who are fleeing persecution and violence.
So Davies ends his video essay
Right.
by reading and reacting to comments from viewers.
Right.
Some of them deny the existence of grooming gangs,
Mm-hmm.
while others accuse him of racism for even raising the issue.
This highlights a key challenge in addressing this issue.
Yeah.
The prevalence of denial.
Right.
And the tendency to dismiss uncomfortable truths.
Right.
It's easier to look away or label those who speak out as bigots than it is to confront the reality of what's happening.
And it creates a climate of fear, doesn't it?
It does.
People are afraid to speak out because they don't want to be labeled racist or Islamophobic, and the silence only benefits the perpetrator.
Exactly. We need to create a space for open and honest dialogue, even when it's uncomfortable. We need to be able to talk about these issues without resorting to name calling,
Right.
or shutting down dissenting voices.
So where do we go from here? We've talked about the horrific crimes, the systemic failures, and the challenges of having these conversations.
Right.
But what about solutions?
Right.
What can we actually do to address this issue?
That's the $1 million question.
Yeah.
And it's one that we'll explore in more depth.
Okay.
In the next part of our deep dive.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have.
We've heard the harrowing accounts from the victims, explored the systemic failures that allowed this abuse to continue for so long, and grappled with the complexities of discussing this issue, openly and honestly.
Yeah, it's tough.
Yeah.
It's really tough.
But now let's turn our attention to solutions.
Okay.
Davies offers a few ideas in his video essay.
Right.
But I'm curious to get your take on what a comprehensive approach to tackling this problem might look like.
It's a multifaceted issue.
Yeah.
So we need a multifaceted approach.
Right.
And it has to start with a shift in mindset.
Okay.
A recognition that child sexual exploitation is everyone's problem.
Yeah.
Not something that happens somewhere else or to someone else's children.
Right.
We need to move beyond denial and acknowledge the scope and severity of the problem.
So it's about breaking down those barriers of silence and indifference that we've been talking about.
Absolutely. We need to create a culture where it's safe for victims to come forward,
Right.
where they know they'll be believed and supported. And that means challenging, those who try to minimize or dismiss these crimes, who try to shift the blame onto the victims or deflect responsibility.
So Davies talks about the need for stricter immigration policies and a stronger police force.
Yeah.
Well, those might seem like straightforward solutions. We've already discussed the potential pitfalls of those approaches.
Right. We need to be wary of quick fixes that might sound good in theory, but could have unintended consequences.
Right.
Stricter immigration policies, for example,
Yeah.
could easily be used to target entire communities based
Yeah.
on prejudice
Right.
and fear,
Yeah.
and simply giving police more power
Yeah.
without addressing issues of corruption or lack of training
Well,
could actually make the problem worse.
so it sounds like we need to think more holistically.
We do.
We need solutions that address not just the symptoms, but the root causes of this problem.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's where things get really interesting
Yeah.
because it requires us to look beyond the immediate crisis
Right.
and ask some fundamental questions about our society.
Yeah.
Why are some children
Yeah.
so vulnerable to exploitation in the first place?
Yeah.
What are the social and economic factors
Yeah.
that contribute to their vulnerability?
So Davies touches on this briefly
Yeah.
in his video essay.
Mm-hmm.
He talks about the importance of building a stronger national identity.
Right.
A sense of shared values that would bind communities together
Yeah.
and prevent individuals from feeling alienated and marginalized.
That's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
But it's one that needs to be unpacked carefully.
Right.
We have to ask ourselves, what kind of national identity we're talking about. Is it
Yeah.
one that's truly inclusive and welcoming
Yeah.
to all, or
Nah.
is it one that's based on exclusion
Right.
and division?
It's easy to slip into a us versus them mentality,
It is.
especially when we're talking about issues as sensitive as this.
Right. And that's why it's so important to focus on solutions
Yeah.
that promote understanding and bridge divides
Right.
rather than widening them.
Yeah.
We need to invest in education and programs that foster intercultural dialogue
Yeah.
and break down stereotypes.
So it's not just about, law enforcement and immigration policy. It's about social cohesion.
Yeah,
It's about creating a society where everyone feels valued and respected.
exactly. And that includes investing in social services, mental health support,
Right.
and programs that address poverty
Yep.
and inequality.
Yeah.
Because let's be honest.
Right.
Many of these children
Yeah.
who are targeted by grooming gangs
Yeah.
are already marginalized and disadvantaged.
Yeah.
They're coming from broken homes,
Right.
struggling with poverty,
Yeah.
lacking access to education and opportunity.
It's like they're falling through the cracks of society,
Yeah.
and the perpetrators are waiting to exploit those cracks.
That's a powerful analogy.
Yeah.
And it highlights the need for a safety net
Right.
that catches these children
Yeah.
before they fall.
Mm-hmm.
We need a system that provides support to families in crisis,
Right.
that offers early intervention programs,
Yeah.
and that ensures that every child has access to a quality education,
Right.
and a safe and nurturing environment.
And let's not forget about the role of technology in all of this.
Right.
As we mentioned earlier, the internet and social media
Yeah.
have made it easier than ever for perpetrators to connect with potential victims
Right.
and share child sexual abuse material.
This is a critical area that needs more attention.
Yeah.
We need to work with tech companies to develop better tools for detecting and removing this material from their platforms.
Yeah.
We also need to educate parents and children
Yeah.
about online safety,
Mhm.
the dangers of sharing personal information, and the importance of reporting suspicious activity.
So it's about empowering young people to be responsible, digital citizens,
It is.
to recognize the signs of grooming and exploitation, and to know how to protect themselves and others.
Exactly. And it's also about holding perpetrators accountable for their online actions.
Yeah.
Law enforcement needs the resources and the expertise to investigate these crimes and bring those responsible to justice.
So it sounds like there's no single solution. It's about addressing this problem
Yes.
from multiple angles, tackling it at the individual, the
Yeah.
community, and the societal levels.
Precisely. And it requires a sustained commitment from from all of us,
Yeah.
policymakers, law enforcement, educators, parents, community leaders, and individuals. We all have a role to play in creating a world
Yeah.
where children are safe from exploitation.
This deep dive has been intense, to say the least.
It has.
We've confronted some truly disturbing information, but
Yeah.
but we've also learned a lot.
Yeah.
You know, we've seen the devastating impact of these crimes, the systemic failures that allowed them to happen, and the challenges of speaking out against them.
Yeah.
But most importantly, we've started to explore what a comprehensive solution might look like.
And that's the key takeaway, isn't it?
Yeah.
Knowledge is power.
Right.
By understanding the complexities of this issue,
Yeah.
we can start to dismantle the systems
Yeah.
that allow it to flourish and build a world where every child is safe,
Right.
valued, and empowered.
So, to our listeners,
Yeah.
I'll leave you with this.
Yeah.
What will you do with this knowledge?
Yeah.
Will you be a bystander, or will you be an advocate for change?
The choice is yours.
Yeah.
And the future of our children depends on the choices we make today.
Well, that's it for this deep dive. We know this has been heavy material.
Yeah.
But remember, hope lies in action.
It does.
Stay informed, stay engaged, and keep diving.